the country part of it, which is funny because no one knows that part of it exists. And so my mom is also, and he was the son of a farm teacher, so he was as rural as rural could be in the middle of New York, which is crazy to think about. And my mom was from Ohio, who was the adopted daughter of coal miners. And so
I see.
when I came around, I was born into the South with Yankee parents, but around Southern people. So I got this weird mix of both.
Yeah.
And I've lived in 4 states. I've moved 6 times. I've been as far out west as Texas, far north as New York, far south as Florida. Talked to more Europeans than I'm proud to say. Currently flirting with one who may or may not be in this room.
Well, it isn't me, but I'm European, and now I feel offended.
All right, fine. It'll be 2 by I promise.
No, I'm kidding. Don't worry. yeah, but it's very nice to hear some well, it's not really a heritage story of someone American, but it's at least to hear some of the situation, because like the only thing I could say is like, my parents are German, my grandparents are German, I'm from Germany, I live here, I don't know. I think
basically
Europe,
Deutschland.
yeah, I think Europe isn't that fun. Like one thing that is like at least a bit out of the ordinary is that my grandfather, the father of my mother, is Italian, or was Italian rather. Unfortunately, he has already passed. But he came here to rebuild Germany, if that makes any sense. And yeah. Like not to really rebuild Germany. He came here in the 60s.
Well, do his own part,
because like you see, I'm 22, so he came to Western Germany in the 60s to help build the eco structure, because we had many people coming from all over Europe to help Western Europe and especially Western Germany become what it became.
Well, it's always cool. It's always cool to meet someone with that background, because even as a kid, I was fascinated by history, and it possessed me until I was like maybe 16 years old. So it's like I always have a general idea of the culture, or what exactly people's experiences are. So it's like, oh yeah, you're talking about post World War II, blah blah blah, and when this was happening, blah blah. So that's cool. Like that's always cool to do, because it's like, wow, what do you know? My education, that I did on my own did not go to waste.
Yeah. Well, I think history in general is quite interesting. My mom, for example, used to work in Eastern Germany, so she always had to travel by train to Eastern Germany, and she always had to like undergo very thorough, controls. I don't know how to say it, like security checks and stuff like that, because they would only let certain people in, and my mom was one of them, but she just worked there in Eastern Germany. She was one of the only few people who did, and it's like generally a crazy thing if you think about it today, because like you always think of Germany as this united state, but only just like 30 years ago it was like 2 separate states. You had Eastern and Western Germany. I think it's crazy.
Well, yeah, and it's cool because it's like it wasn't divided culturally. It was an entirely new concept at the time. It was divided, let's say, politically. And it's like that was an entirely new concept that had never happened before. So it's like,
but like you see, the out of the political division there, from that on, there were developing some cultural differences, because obviously in Eastern Germany, you wouldn't have like a lot of the Western stuff. Like we in Western Germany, or the people in Western Germany, not we, because I wasn't even alive back then. But people back then obviously like had a lot of American pop culture, or generally like international pop culture. They had like I don't know, chocolate bars from the USA, and I don't know, wine from France, and stuff like that, you know. But the people in Eastern Germany, they didn't even have bananas because there were such strict embargoes and such strict, you know, trade bans on who to trade with, and they were part of this like the Comintern, the Eastern thing, the communist thing. So they didn't get anything, and they couldn't even travel anywhere. They didn't allow people to get out of Eastern Germany except for some communist states to go on vacation. And they,
it's crazy.
That way, there was a cultural divide, and when Germany was united and a lot of Eastern German people came to Germany, it was like they were refugees from somewhere else in the world. What as like I've been told, it was really crazy because people had to adjust to Western life because it was so different. It's crazy to think about it, but it is.
It is, and it's crazy to even think about. A few hours away, you're almost in a completely different country where everyone has the same car, and like everyone, like was it 1 in 10 people like were government informants or something like that? 1 in 5 or 1 in 10, which is insanity.
Thing because
which like at the dinner table, you're just eating dinner.
More than 10, 1 in 10. Certainly more than 1 in 10. So Stasi, Staatssicherheit is what it's called, like the security.
Yeah, the German secret police, East German.
Yeah, it's the Stasi, and it was really crazy. It was like everyone like, could be a member. You
right. Imagine where you're in a world where you're sitting at the dinner table and you just say the smallest little criticism or the smallest little thing, and you get reported by your own aunt or half sister, or maybe your even own children. Or your wife, if she's really that, she hates you that much. Like, that's some 1984 shit right there. Like, that's crazy to think about. That actually happened. And it's like,
but it's crazy.
My dad is not the oldest, you know, he's not the oldest guy on the block. He's 52, 53. But he used to tell me he was old enough to watch the 1980s Olympics.
Yes.
When the Americans fought the Russians in hockey, which who knew
they won, right?
Right, and they won. They were a bunch of fucking college nobodies versus like a professional
huge cultural thing. I know.
Yeah, and it's like I remember him telling me about how he was a kid watching this. Like this was like the melting point of the Cold War. And then like how people freaked the fuck out when we somehow won. And it's like and I recently wrote a paper about it actually for my college.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And it's like he understands like what it's like to actually be under threat that the world will end. And what it was like to be enemies with someone and hate a country and a whole ideology that you hadn't even really met or knew. And he has this understanding of world maintenance, of keeping what you have clean and tidy and efficient so that the generations after you can benefit from that, because you could lose it if you're not careful.
I zoned out. What are you guys talking about?
We're talking about all sorts of shit.
Can I tell you one thing?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'm really not trying to be offensive or anything, but you have so much to speak about, so much to tell. Well, on the one hand, it's very interesting, but like, I don't know, you just keep talking. I love to listen to you, I'd love to talk to you, but I don't know because there are other people in this channel. Maybe they want to say anything. I don't know.
Well, Andy's a friend of mine, and she's looking at things, I think. And Spooky and I were talking. So Fubert's the only one I don't know. Hello, Fubert.
Hey, it's me, Fubert.
Oh, that's you. Oh, then yeah, Princess Alice is here.
Hey, I've kind of been recording this for myself.
Yeah, I'm just saying because you just like keep going.
That's what always happens. Yeah. And you should see me when I've been drinking. Oh God.
You haven't been drinking, okay?
No, I'm completely sober.
But it's a good thing, like to have so much spirit and so much thought in you. It's I think that's a very good thing. Because me myself, I only really get to talk when I drink something. Obviously, I drank something today, but otherwise, I really have difficulty doing that. Like... even though I'm not, I'm neither shy nor introverted, but I don't know. Just
yeah,
it doesn't come to me.
I feel like these kinds of conversations or caliber, if that's how you want to put it, of conversation should happen more often, where people are just kind of excitedly discussing what interests them. And that's such a small but universally important thing, and that we don't do enough, is we don't talk about what really interests us.
But you know that there's so much I don't know, so much hope, so much thought in your voice. It's like you say everything you say is reinforced by really believing in it. That's what it sounds like when you talk, you know.
That's interesting, because I never really heard about that until I'd say the last couple of years, and I wonder if that's a character change, because it's like someone told me in my English class, they were just giving me shit, and they said something really mean, but like we were and like in front of like the professor too, and just like, and the professor's like, oh my gosh, he's like, what, he's so confident. It's like I got to tear at him a little bit. And I was like, really, I sound that confident? And I was like, I guess I do.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like a thing that I've revolved around my life. I guess the one thing I've always valued, no matter how many changes I've had, is that I've always valued what I know or feel to be the truth.
Yeah, but I think that's a very good thing, because when you talk about something, and especially when you talk about something for a long time, you can people will listen to you. People will get invested in your story, because you tell it from the heart, you know, because at least it sounds like that. I don't know. I don't know what you really think, but
no, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. It's like,
but it's refreshing to listen to someone who is so much into something, because I've been on Discord for so many times, and I've talked to so many people, and most people you don't even really realize that they are there, because they're like whispering in the microphone, but you speak with so much force. It's all encompassing, and it's I think it's a very good thing, and I feel it's very refreshing. So all power to you, my man.
Thanks. It's like I always I want to make sure whenever I talk to anyone, it's like I get what they think to be the absolute truth, and then I'll always ask questions like why they came to that conclusion, and then we'll be able to reason with each other exactly how they came to that. One of my friends is a Freemason, and he's this very spiritually intelligent guy. I use the word spiritually because that's a combination of multiple things. And he had this very unique approach to the interpretation of Christianity. And him and I ended up talking, and we ended up having very similar interpretations. And it's like the way that he put everything was very just forwardly genuine. And then I always want to make sure that I'm energetic. I'm seeming like I'm comfortable in the situation, so that I try to promote other people to also do the same thing. Because I don't want to feel like I don't want to scare people.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes being aggressive kind of can be scary.
No, I see. Or should it starting to rain? Right now I'm on the balcony, I'm smoking a cigarette, but it's starting to rain. I got some like clothes to dry on the balcony. I gotta take care of that. I'll be, I don't know, back in 5 minutes.
Okay. Where the hell did Andy go? Hello, Alice, by the way.
Hey.
Also spooky if you're hello. You're talking in general. Oh man, Spooky's laying down the word of law. Damn. Preach, Spooky.
Wait. What's going on?
Preach. In the sex field, women have a lot of power when it comes to a man's life. Preach.
Well, that's because Crow, he's talking about he's getting sexually harassed at work by some girl. And he's saying that he can't report her. No, let me talk. He's saying that he can't report her because if he reports her, he'll get bullied by his male coworkers and then he'll be called gay, which it shouldn't, that shouldn't matter. If she's harassing you, you should report her. And then Wizard said that if she wouldn't really go to jail for harassing him because she's a girl and the Me Too movement would defend her. And I said, no, the Me Too movement will defend harassment victims regardless of it's male or female because they're the Me Too movement.
That's interesting. Yeah, I that's very, wow. Damn. I wouldn't expect a situation like that to pop up. Crazy.
Yo, I'm back. Like,
welcome back. How was your laundry?
Well, fortunately not. But it's starting to rain. Thankfully, everything inside.
I would say that probably the number one thing that I would say reinvigorated and re-inspired me to become passionate about these subjects, because I was, what would be a non-personal way of putting it?
Mm-hmm.
I was deeply nihilistic for a long time in my life. And I had a general apathy that was much more toxic than it could ever hope to be now. Yes. And obviously that didn't make me the greatest people person.
Yeah.
And then, life happened. I started healing and getting better and just getting mentally, physically better and emotionally healthier. Yeah. And I learned to handle my life better as I grew up. And then I met this crazy Kermit the Frog sounding Canadian, Jordan Peterson. And that man, probably single-handedly the biggest reason that I got re-inspired and reinvigorated to be so interested in these topics, because these topics over my life had become boring and I didn't really see them as meaningful. But the way Jordan Peterson spoke in a way, like what he said I was thinking, but I couldn't articulate. Or it was something along the lines of what I was thinking. And so this person, is speaking what you want to say, but you can't, and he is. And so you want to learn how to do that. And so I paid attention very carefully, and I observed as much as I could. Him, other speakers like Sam Harris, and other, mainstream, I'll use the word intellectuals, I guess. Professionals, I think I would better use the word. And it's like, and then in my senior year of high school, I took an honors level civics and economics class.
Yeah.
And my teacher was amazing. He just taught the class in such an interesting way. And I would just talk to him after class about these concepts or origins or issues. And he would just intrigue me so. And I became very good. And we when we all graduated, we had like a school-wide party.
Like, you graduated from what? From college or?
No, from high school.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When we graduated from high school. we had this after party in a place called Fun Depot where you could go and have fun, and teachers would sometimes go, and my civics teacher went, and he had like a crowd of 15 kids around him like the whole night. 15 different kids would come in, and there was so much rumor surrounding them, and he was so interesting. He was accepted into the CIA but never went in. He's very intriguing on his spin of conspiracy theories, because it's not that he like necessarily teaches them in general. He kind of like teaches the concept of them, and the one thing that he was the most convinced by was JFK and his assassination.
And in what capacity?
Well, he says he's kind of in the middle. He doesn't believe in a conspiracy, but if he did, he'd believe in two-bullet theory. But during the class, he didn't make it seem that way. He made a very convincing argument for both. Like, it was impossible to pick because he's one of those teachers who can legitimately argue both sides, and you go fuck. you're like shit.
Yeah, that's an important thing. But if you look at the JFK assassination, I don't think there's a conspiracy to be had. I think, if you objectively think about JFK, he wasn't that great of a president. Obviously, he done a lot of good, especially in social services. But if you look at it
economically,
but under his wing, the Vietnam War did start under his rule.
That's true.
There's a lot of things that people like to always glorify JFK, and probably he was one of the best presidents, but and probably one of the best.
Doesn't make him flawless.
Yeah, probably one of the best leaders the Western society ever had in general, but still the Vietnam War broke out under his wing. It wasn't like people like Lyndon B. Johnson, I think, was after him, and after Lyndon B. Johnson, what's his
Nixon.
Name? Yeah, right. So like Nixon was the whole Vietnam warlord or some shit like that. It's because people are always ready to forget that in favor
on, Chinese relations.
Yeah.
What he's known for in terms of foreign policy is renegotiating our relationship with China into a more positive direction. Well, it's like in Vietnam kind of became this thing that other presidents would inherit and just like have a big sigh.
But the other thing is that the Chinese obviously supported the Vietnamese people.
Yep.
It's the same thing like years before that in the Korea War, like in the 50s when
and that
China,
was more direct. Like they actually fought.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Like the Chinese War obviously was one of the most violent wars, especially for the short time period they fought in. And well, to this day, North Korea isn't what anyone would consider a stable state.
Well, you know what's really cool?
What is?
I've met in college. I've met a few people who are Hmong, and or I've learned about that particular culture, and it's fascinating because they're like, oh yeah, my family moved over, during the Vietnam War when it started getting bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's actually really cool. And it's like, so, and I asked her, it's like, do you have a particular unique language? And like, do you have and I'd studied Asia enough to know where a general idea, but I'd never heard of a Hmong culture before. That was new. And I was like, do you have a particular country in which you kind of call your own? And just in case I was wrong or ignorant. And she's like, no, she's like, no, we're kind of nomadic. We kind of go from one location to the other. So I was like, basically, you're the Asian version of the Jews. She's like, yeah, basically.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. To add to this, a very good friend of mine is of Kurd heritage. So
that's cool too.
Yeah, but originally he's born in Turkey, and like the Kurd people are like a society that span a lot of countries. I think a lot of them are like in Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, like all this huge area, but they've never really, at least in the modern times, had a country to their own. But that friend of mine was like a Kurd person, and his parents left Turkey because of discrimination, because people knew that they were Kurd people and they didn't like them.
Well, it's because the Kurds are secular. What would be the specific culture they belong to?
Yeah.
Is it Persian or is it Turk? I think it's Turk is the culture group they belong to.
Well, it's I think it's
or Turkic.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that.
I think they might be a Turkic group by technicality, but they're like, anyways, they're one of the very few modern tribes that or if you want to call it that, one of the few groups of people who are truly secular, which is insanity.
But you can't really call it a tribe, because like they are still fighting with very much modern weapons and some.
Oh yeah, well no, it's not what I mean. I mean, like, demographically,
they're tribal in their demographic. Yeah.
Well, I don't mean tribal as in terms of government. I mean,
I know what you.
Yeah,
it's a language barrier. I think we know what we mean, but it's fine. Yeah, but it's really interesting because they, like the friend of mine is not Muslim at all, but most Kurd people actually are Muslim, but they like left their Muslim beliefs at the region, and when they went for Germany, they readjusted into like not Catholic but Protestant. Is it called Protestant?
Yeah, Protestant.
Yeah.
Really?
They readjusted into that, and they adapted that belief, and now they have some shops and a lot of buildings, like real estate, like in the real estate business now. And but like that 90% of the families here in Germany now, and most of them are registered as German now, and they're such nice people. Like the friend of mine is one of the best human beings I've ever met. He's such a nice guy, and his parents are so nice. They used to have this kebab shop. It's a bit cliche because they come from the area around Turkey, and now they're in Germany and they have this kebab shop. Unfortunately, now they are already too old to have the shop, but some years ago they used to have it, and they would always give it to me for a discount or even for free when I went there with a friend of mine. Such nice people, and they didn't, they tried to adjust to Germany, but their German was very, very rough. But we still got along. Like we still could talk with each other. Like every time I went there, even like if I didn't went there with him or with anyone they knew, every time they would always try to talk to me forever. Well, yeah, how are you? How are your parents? And stuff like that. And we would always talk for like at least 20 minutes.
They're very social people.
Yeah, very social, very, extremely friendly people, and I really got to love them. And I think things like that just show you that like racism is just in your head. It's nothing that really should exist.
Right. Yeah, on social, in terms of social values, yeah, really. It's like
yeah, it always depends on the human being at hand, because you can never know, like, you can meet someone from a completely different culture and they can be as friendly as they can be, but you can also meet someone from the same culture as you, maybe even from the same fucking house as you, and maybe they're fucking assholes. So
Yeah.
you never fucking know. But
because it's all about
this shit
it's all
doesn't.
about individual values.
Yeah, and it does not necessarily correlate with one country's values, not with one society's values, and sometimes not even with one family's values, because there are a lot of people from awful families. They've got out and they're nice people now, and yeah,
Right. And one of these days, I imagine, as if I still manage to be here and we get to talking. Oh shit! Really? What? Hold on.
yeah, take your time. Well, but if I can throw in at least some like small political opinion, like stuff like that is the reason I'm left wing. Like, you see, I believe in a lot of Western values. I believe in freedom, and I thoroughly believe in democracy. And I don't think that like if an authoritarian state would make anything better, but I think going into like with small steps into the way of socialist theory is a good thing, as long as we keep it democratic. Because I think we are all humans and we all deserve the equal chance.
Well, of course, talking to a Southern American man, I'm sure you can probably assume that I'm a little bit of a different thought. Like, I agree, indeed, we are all humans, but that wouldn't be my, what would be the word, solution? Because I'm not quite sure what it is. One thing Jordan Peterson surmises I really respect is he's like, the right, from what we understand in general, the right is like, okay, we have this hierarchy, we must preserve it. The left says, okay, well, what about the people who are dispossessed or screwed over by the hierarchy? And then you're left with a conundrum. How exactly do you negotiate that? What's the solution to that? And then as he answers, understandably, we don't know. So,
why don't we change the hierarchy then?
Because every time that's been attempted, it hasn't gone.
No, well. I don't mean in a way like a bloody revolution.
Oh, you like slow change? Yeah.
I'm certainly not talking about Marxist theory. I'm not saying like we have to have a dictatorship of the workers or anything like that. God no. Like,
but like
what?
Well, like for example, like an improvement or like, building maybe upon it. Is that maybe what? Yeah. Well, and that's what's been, attempted, and that's what we're trying to do. But it's a very arduous and difficult process because it's not innately obvious what exactly we're tampering with. So, it seems to be very slowly.
Yeah.
We have people who say, okay, we have the structure, we're going to make sure it stays intact. You guys try to figure out what we can add to it or build onto it that isn't going to like kill the whole machine. Well, and that's basically the intense negotiation.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got a working thing, at least like in Germany. But in Germany, like the state is way more social than it is in the US. So I'm more talking out of the perspective of a German than as a.
Oh my God, guys!
Yeah, I think that'd be fair. Hi.
Hi.
Wizard and Crowy are having a baby.
Really?
Wizard and him?
Look in the media. Their baby pictures in there.
Really? Oh, that's so nice.
Ooh.
I want to have a baby.
Well, I'm not sure that's.
I mean, can I have one too? Like I'm left wing. There gotta be someone left for me to give a baby, right? No, I'm just kidding. I got someone left. Well, it wasn't because of me. No, what did I want to say? I want to say
Oh wait, what were you gonna say?
I think I was talking about how Germany is already way more on the social side than the US is. And for me personally, I would like to see it on a even more left side. But I certainly wouldn't want to have like open borders or like free welfare for everyone. I don't want any of that. But
you kind of want to more focus inward.
But well, the welfare system could really be built upon in a different way, because to some people it's like the important thing to get back into society, but for other people it's just not enough. And well, one part of society which I think is really fucking crass is that you have this like on these right-wing people that shave their heads and tattoo themselves swastikas, that go onto the streets and like protest against refugees in general. They are all living on welfare, and they are fucking mad about it. Like, you know, they don't do anything but get money for it, but they're mad that supposedly refugees are getting more, which they are not. But
that's not the argument. The argument I've heard is that they were getting it in general.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I heard.
Yeah. Well, it's both, but I think both are stupid. Or what do you think about it?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I think a nation comes to its own conclusions about what policies they want to implement.
Yeah. And so you see, Trump says America first. The whole place should say Germany first.
Well, it's like, well, the idea is this, right? It's like we got to focus on ourselves before we try helping anyone out, because we're currently fucked. We are pretty economically fucked.
Yeah.
So it's like,
but if you look at Germany,
since we have what is it, Puerto Rico as a territory, that because we have Puerto Rico as a territory, we should make it a state.
Well, and right, and the people of Puerto Rico have the right to decide whether to keep it status quo, be their own country, or be a state. There's nothing forcing them, and that's well within their right to come to that own conclusion.
But that's different from the situation in Germany. But go ahead.
Right. So I was going to talk to you about what exactly I think about, I guess, immigration very shortly. I mean,
you know,
it's like I'm a Reagan guy. It's like I'm a Reagan guy, right? It's like
Reagan did nothing wrong.
But yeah, and that's the immigration system we still have, is from the Reagan era. It's like, look, you know, I mean, I wouldn't want to apply to a country and them accepts me because I'm simply off the basis of some arbitrary characteristic I can't control. I want them to accept me because they want me to become a dutiful, helpful, providing citizen. And if they can't accept me,
so much different in Germany.
Well, yeah, but let me finish my philosophical point. If they can't accept me because they're having a problem, like on a domestic massive scale, I'm not going to think they're racist or that they're destroying my human rights. There is no human right that ensures immigration. That's a completely ridiculous
that's a completely Like, that's an argument some people would.
Right. And that's what happened. And they're welcome to the discussion.
He is like that. He is like.
Right, and that's welcome to the discussion. But here's the. I can't tell. For example, if I applied and they turned me away, I don't think that's morally right or wrong. It's just a decision that was made based off the policy of the nation at that time. That's just the nation's policy. We can't quantify it as right or wrong. So it's like if the nation's made its own decision not to accept refugees, that's well within the nation's right. If Poland doesn't want more refugees, they don't want more refugees. That's what the people of Poland want. But you can't tell them they're wrong or right.
What about if you were a refugee?
If I was a refugee, then I'm sure that'd be frustrating. But I think that'd be understandable.
Well, I don't think it would be frustrating. I think it would be soul crushing.
All right. If I was a refugee, let me finish. If I was a refugee, I wouldn't begin my search by applying into the hardest country to become a citizen in.
Yeah, well, they don't give out that many books on how to emigrate in Central Africa or in Syria. When your child gets fucking bombed to pieces and you are just fucking try to save your own face and you go to some boat and you try to go somewhere, you try to apply there and they just say, no, we can't accept you, please go back to.
And it's at that point the world is cruel and it's most of the time against you. That life is most certainly not fair. And I'm not saying that we should make it any right. And I'm not saying we should make it any more or less fair. I'm saying that if I was in that situation where I was caring for, let's say, my kid and I lost my wife in the war, obviously I'd be emotionally devastated beyond belief. And probably my child is maybe not okay for the rest of his life. I'm going to have to fucking deal with that for the rest of mine. Here's the thing.
Don't say something like that.
Well, I mean, emotional scene. So here's the thing. If I had to personally go through that, and I've had my share of emotional trauma, I think that if I realized for 5 seconds, 10 million other people, because it's plus that applicants a year to the United States. I think it's, 20 million applicants a year? And we only accept one.
That's a lot compared to the
population. That's more than some countries' population. We accept 1 million every year, I think.
We accept up to 2 million people.
If we accepted 20 million a year, our population would skyrocket, and our economy couldn't handle it.
It already is. We accept 1 million. We accept 1 million. We're 340 million.
Fucking die.
Well, hold on. I'm not saying we should stop.
No, I'm not saying that you think that, but there was just something I said. Don't worry, like I'm not trying to portray you as a bad person. Please, sorry if that sounded like that. I'm sorry.
No, it's like it's like I wish I could help the most that I can, right? And so if I went into that country and they were having economic issues out the ass, and turns out they're really not all that helpful, they're just not nearly as violent. It's like, I don't think I'd be getting the right aid maybe I need. Like, I'd obviously need a fresh start. And if I'm in a place that can't give that to me, I should probably go to a better place for me and my family. Now my survival instincts kick in, right?
But and
so what I'm suggesting for me, right, is I obviously want to do as much as I can. So I think that we should fix as many domestic issues and economic issues as we can. And then see what we can do about the current world problems without interfering.
But we don't fix them, we enhance them.
Well, yeah, right. Well, like, for example, if you're having an economic downpour, a wave of refugees can either make it better or worse. It depends on your economic situation, if you have inflation or deflation. And so it depends. And economics is very complicated. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about it anyways.
But if you look, especially at Africa and Northern Africa,
they're the fastest economy fastest growing economy.
the problem is that we exploit a lot of natural resources in Africa, and a lot of people die because of us, and a lot of people live in shitty conditions because of it. And add to this warfare in the Middle East, and you have
I've heard arguments for
millions of people like fleeing to Europe and the US. But obviously, that's not the only thing that is.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Obviously, it's not the only factor making people refugees. Like I'm not acting like only the Western world is evil. That's bullshit.
Right.
I know that. I fully know that, and I would never claim that's bullshit. But
what you and I can certainly agree on is that the solution, whatever it is, very complicated.
Yes, obviously.
And
yeah,
and a lot of people are very sensitive about those topics because they're understandably very emotionally attached.
Yeah.
It's very hard
it's
to
just
try to keep a
hard
cool head.
I don't know. Have you ever met some refugees or talked to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like me personally, I haven't met so many of them, but a couple of weeks ago, I wrote
of former refugees, right? So American, the children of first generation Americans who are now second and third generation, like that Hmong girl and Angel.
Yeah, I was talking to some like first generation refugees, someone who just 1 year ago fled to Germany, and I was riding the train with him, and I actually bought his train ticket because he couldn't figure it out. Like he actually wanted to pay me, but I just said no because it wasn't an expensive train ticket. Yeah, it was just his thing, No, I'm kidding. I actually paid his train ticket, and
what is it? Train tickets pretty relatively moderate to cheap over in Europe most of the time.
Well, especially in Germany, they can be expensive. And well, we were going in the same direction, and like I actually took his ticket, and I got some like 2-person ticket in the information thingy. So we both like were riding along for like 20 minutes or something. I was just talking to him because I was interested. Because like he obviously was black, he couldn't speak German right, so like something was up with it. Like either he's a tourist or he's a refugee. And I was talking to him, he was talking to me, and I was like asking him where's he from, and he said he was from Ethiopia. Like, God fucking damn it, it's not even Syria or anything else. It's like Italy attacked them in World War II, I think. Like, he's a late refugee. No, I'm just kidding. No, and I was talking to him.
Someone didn't get the memo.
Yeah. No, he was like 1 year older than me, 23, but he studied there to become a sports teacher, and like we were talking the whole way, and he was such a nice guy. His name was like Solomon. It's a name you wouldn't even have in Western society. But he was such a nice guy, and I really got along with him. And
means man of peace.
Really, it does.
Yeah, Suleiman. Yeah.
Nice, yeah. He was definitely. We were talking the whole train ride, and when we got off, we went into different directions, and he like pulled me on my backpack and said, because like I introduced him to my name and we got along, he said like, Fabian, have a nice weekend. Thank you for meeting me or something like that. And I thought it was a great experience. He was such a great person, and he was so thankful. But one thing I also talked about him was like the refugee situation at all. And he said he knows a lot of refugees that act up, that are like destroying public stuff, and that cause a lot of trouble, and he does not like to be associated with them, but those people are certainly there. So, I mean, you know, there's always like two sides to a medal, you know.
Right. Yeah. And that's very hard to negotiate too.
Yes.
And that's kind of come into face, you know, socially. I think speaking almost the Western world over.
Yes.
And that's had a lot of implications. But you know, and I have stories like that too for fellow citizenry of mine, and I don't really think, you know, I don't, you know, whether they're, you know, I'm growing up in the South, and it's a fairly diverse place, and I don't give a fucking. I'm one of those Americans, and most Americans feel this way. Most actual Americans don't give a flying fuck if you happen to be darker or lighter. We really don't give a damn.
Yeah.
And so,
except if you're from Alabama.
No, except if you're from
I'm kidding.
You're right on that one. or California, especially.
Oh, well, California is a difficult place.
You can smell that West Coast from here. So it's like, you know.
Yeah.
Man, one of the stories I have from school.
Just wait a second. Maybe a bit louder. I'll try to knock out some ice cubes out of the thingy. Don't worry about it.
Okay. One of the short stories I have from high school is I had this friend named Quentin, and he was a SoundCloud rapper, of course, and he was a cool
He was
guy.
How old is
he wasn't like particularly well trying to come up, and you know, he's one of those guys. So, you know, him and I got into talking, and we knew each other, and then we're just talking in entrepreneurship class one time.
All right.
And, you know, a lot of the time I have conversations with students, you know, because I have a deep projecting voice the whole fucking room can hear. And, you know, my teachers will over here. My teachers will over here.
I believe that, yeah.
And I'm talking to Quentin, and, you know, I'm talking to him as energetically and as focused as I am now. And he finds out where I live. He live over there. I was like, yeah. He's like, well, you know, shit, I work right down the street. You know, I work in that grocery store. It's like, oh yeah, I go there all the time. He's like, yeah, have you ever seen me there? I'm like, you know, I don't think I have. He's like, man, how do you miss the one big giant ass guy in the middle of the store?
Yes.
And so I'm trying because I wasn't expecting it. And I'm like,
I know exactly what you mean.
I was like, you know, Quentin, I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
And the widest smile on his face. He was trying so hard not to laugh.
You know, they have so much fun with that shit, don't they? It's amazing. Yeah, I have some colored friends myself. You know.
Oh man, and I would, if I had to take a guess, I'd say at least half my friends are of Hispanic origin in some way.
Yeah.
And you know, I've quite a bit, as you might imagine, and I got to know several of them while in high school, and a lot of them had very similar ideas to what I was proposing, and they kind of explained to me like the social implications of not agreeing with the rest of your family on certain controversial topics is. And I was whisked away. I was pleasantly surprised. Really? You think this? And they're like, yeah, like I legitimately believe that. And you're like, that's a breath of fresh air.
It's really surprising how many, like in Germany would say, you know, we don't have a lot of black people, but we have a lot of like Turk people, and it's somewhat the equivalent of it, because we also got a word, it's Kanaken. It's a very derogatory word for them, and if I said it, like someone would beat me probably up for it. But if someone of the origin said it's just like a black person would say the N-word, it's exactly the same. And if you are around a lot of Turks in Germany, and you say that word, it's a no-brainer. It's just
Right.
you say it. It's like if you are an American around with a lot of black people, you say the N-word, no one bats an eye. You are in your group of friends. It's all fine. It's not public. It's not derogatory. It's just a word.
The best part of my humor too is I've been on a lot of political servers, and I was on this one, and I was talking to this guy, and when I'm humorous, I'm very I think the word would be controversial, and because I'm a Southern guy, and so we joke in certain ways about certain things.
So being Southern justifies being offensive.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying.
I'm just kidding. I don't give a fuck, dude.
But
you
like,
can say what you want. I don't care.
But like growing up, like when you have multiple people from multiple places who do odd cultural things, you just kind of go like, "Goddamn white people." No, but it's like, I was talking to him about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Why do you joke like that?" And I was like. And it was a serious question. He was just interested.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I joke about I joke about serious topics because if everyone had less of a stick up their ass about race, no one would give a fuck.
Yeah.
And so I play the character of a racist Southern guy as commentary. Like it's meant to communicate the silliness of it, and he's like, you know what? That's actually pretty good. It's like obviously if I make people uncomfortable, like I'm not gonna do it, and obviously like I'm looking first, but with all of my friends, we are brutal with each other. One of my college friends I've known for 6 weeks. One of my college friends I've known for 6 weeks, his name is Omar, but we call him Chief because he looks like a fucking Cherokee Native American, but he's Hispanic as fuck.
Yeah,
and one of our friends, and he loves it, and he loves it.
Yeah.
And one of our friends,
why would he
Chris,
give a shit?
Right, and he doesn't. And one of our friends, Chris, who's from Belvedere, North Carolina, as country can be, except he doesn't sound like it, is like. We were just sitting around just joking, and he's like, God damn it, Omar, this is why I like you. Goddamn UFOs flying everywhere." And we were laughing until we cried.
Exactly. I've told you about the friend of mine that's actually like from Turkey, but that has like a Kurd history, heritage. I make jokes about him every time. Like shit like you don't even have a country, shut the fuck up, and shit like that. It just flows. No one gives a fuck.
The way guys joke on each other, I think is actually socially helpful.
Yeah, it's not like anyone's getting offended, and like even with the college friends or anything, like you can say what you want. Like you say, I don't know. Phone is, did you steal it? And you look to the black person and no one gives a fuck. It's just humor. Like everyone that has a fucking stick up their ass should I don't know, fucking pull it out. I'm really getting annoyed by shit like that because I'm a very tolerant person and I'm quite left wing, and I've met a lot of refugees, and I've actually helped.
What's funny about that is like I'm center right. Every test I've ever taken or any thought experiment I've ever had has kind of proven that. But I hold the same value. It's like
I think that's common sense.
Right.
You don't have to be political about it. Yeah?
Right. We understand that there's a problem and it needs to be solved. And
exactly, yeah.
And it's like if people are reasonable, they're not like gonna give a shit. And it's like and I think and on Discord a lot I'll talk to people and we'll agree on a lot of things, and then like I'll meet someone who voices some disagreement, whether maybe reasonable or maybe they're being a little more aggressive or rude. It doesn't matter, right? You get all shades, or maybe they just want just a legitimate friendly debate and exchange of ideas.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like these other people will be so aggressive and just like, well, if you don't agree with me, then you must be wrong, or doing this, or you're arguing this stereotypical thing. It's like, I'm just like, calm down. Like it's okay. Like, it doesn't really. You don't have to attach that much to it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
exactly.
Also, I think that I've been on all places on Discord. I've talked to communists. I've talked to Nazis. I've talked to black nationalists. I've talked to white nationalists. I've talked to anarcho-primitivists, which, by the way, are people who believe we should go back to hunter-gatherer societies.
Yeah.
They're very intriguing.
If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known.
Right, and I've met anarcho-capitalists. I've met sorts of weird political, socio-religious, or ethno-religious things, and it's
real quick, can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Sure.
Have you ever met a legit right wing, like extremely right?
Yes.
In real life. Because
in real life.
Yes. Because
think.
Well.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Yeah. Well, can I tell you a little story and then you tell me about your guy?
Sure.
Okay. You see, well, as I said, I'm from Germany, so like being right wing is associated with a social stigma. Because you know, the Third Reich.
Yeah, it leaves a bad
and
taste
shit like that. Instantly.
Even though they were very socially right wing, but all the economically right wing.
Nah, well, okay.
The hints in the name national.
Yeah, well, but I'm talking about people that aren't really like right wing. They're just straight up neo-Nazi. They're straight up racist. And they call themselves like, I don't know how to say it in English, Kameradschaft. Kameradschaft is something you would say to a couple of Nazis, but they call themselves it. So they call themselves Kameradschaft, and then the other name is like a place nearby, and they actually sometimes get to like do demonstrations and shit through the city, and they, like always there are like 20 people on the one side and at least 300 people on the other side fighting against the racist bullshit. But well, they'll never give up, I think. But I have one friend. I've met him actually in the left-wing punk rock scene. There, like a long time ago, I regularly went to local punk rock concerts, and I got really drunk, and I just talked to people. And I met some people, and there was like these two friends, one's called Steph, one's called Mo. And Steph and Mo, Steph had a mohawk, and like this, you know, he looked like he hadn't been home for at least 3 weeks. Mo, on the other hand, looked like he like a hip hop dude, you know. He had a cap, big pants, oversized jacket. I wasn't thinking much of it, but I got really close to both of them. Met both their parents. I was spending time with them regularly. We went to punk concerts, to actually some left-wing demonstrations, like not some radical communist shit, but some average stuff, you know, some normal stuff against the fascists. And well, sometime they didn't get along very well with each other. I was still friends with Steph, the one with the mohawk, and I was still friends with the other person, but he was getting weird. I don't know. And at that time, I don't know, Steph just fucking disappeared. The guy with the mohawk, I've never, ever heard from him again. To this day. I don't know if he's dead. I don't know if he's on the street. I really don't fucking know. I don't know. I tried to go by his house. His mother wasn't there. His brother wasn't there. I don't know what the fuck they did. I don't know if they just I don't know. No idea. But the other guy, Mo, told you about that. Person with the hip hop clothes, he was getting all apolitical. I was talking to him about some left-wing ideology and was like, no, I don't care about that. I just want to get drunk. I was like, okay, yeah, well, but we were on the streets together, you remember? And he was like, no, yeah, well, okay, but no, I'm not. Let's just get drunk. And we get drunk. Like, I don't care. Like, I mean, I'm still left wing. I still love alcohol. I don't care. Someday else, like months later, he calls me and asks, yo, you're gonna get drunk? What are you doing right now? I was like at home, just sitting in my bed. And obviously, as a bored person, I thought, yeah, let's get drunk. He was like, pick me up at there and there. Okay, so I went there by foot, picked him up. Next to him, some obviously right-wing person with, he didn't have swastika tattooed, but he had some right-wing shirts and some shit on, and some like, Division Germania and all that shit on his shirt, and I was getting a really bad feeling from that. But I was picking it up. I wasn't thinking so much about it, and I said, "Yo, you're Nazi now." And he looked at me and said, "No, but I'm right wing." And I was looking back at him and I thought, "Huh? Like, what the fuck? The last time we met, you're apolitical."
Oh, I've met people like that.
Before that, I mean, the first time I met him, it was in the left-wing scene, in the local left-wing scene,
and then he was apolitical, somehow
and
right.
then was right-wing, but he never recovered from the right-wing shit, Since then, he done a lot of shit.
Is there like no right-wing alternative that's at least sensible?
No. I'm afraid
you think AFD is?
No, AFD is, well, it's hard to say. I'm not sure if my father votes AFD. I love my father, by the way. I have a very good relationship with him. But that doesn't mean we agree politically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As is usually the case. It tends to develop as one gets older.
Yeah.
But
yeah, but legit, my parents and me, we have an extremely good relationship. Like, we meet each other at least twice a month. We talk, we eat, we do everything a family does, Sometimes we go for a walk together. My parents are in their 60s now. They're like at the end of their 50s. They're very nice people, and I've always loved them. I've never brought them shame. I've never done a bad thing, so.
As far as my experience, because you asked,
yeah,
I have seen members of the Klan and of the KKK. I have seen them, and
no shit. I didn't even elaborate on the worst parts. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I'm very interested in hearing your perspective, but I really have to tell the story all to the end, because he was getting more and more right wing, and he wasn't just like a bit conservative or some shit. One day, the interesting thing is, he still called me every other night and asked if I was getting drunk. Well, that's the only thing he asked me, because, like, I've got a lot of friends, like a big circle of friends, but part of them only know me when I get drunk. And he certainly was one of them. And he only called me to ask if I was getting drunk because he was getting drunk. Which is not very flattering, because you just think you're someone to be there with him when he gets fucked. Well, anyway, so The thing is, in the beginning, I thought, yeah, he was extremely right wing, maybe even neo-Nazi, but who gives a shit, you know? Like, I always valued friendship over politics. You know, I always openly told him I'm left wing. I don't agree with your extremely right wing stances. I don't care for that. I think that's stupid, and we were always fine with that. But he just wouldn't fucking shut up about it. He would permanently talk about neo-Nazi theory. Stuff like the Holocaust never happened, which, by the way, to say is already a crime in Germany. But never mind that. He told me why the Holocaust never happened. Because they didn't have enough like ovens in Auschwitz.
Oh, that's a common theory.
Yeah, my fucking. But he legitimately believed it because he is not very smart, and he just all those lies and you know like he told me this shit every time because I was really ready to like fuck like I don't fucking care if he's right wing. I don't fucking care what he does. He was a friend to me, you know. Actually, he was a really close friend to me at one.
But the fact, you know, he keeps trying to force it down your throat is a non-negotiable.
You see, sometime he even slept at my place. We hung out. You know, a very long time ago, we smoked weed together regularly. Whoa. But he doesn't do that anymore because it's like
degenerate.
Yeah, exactly. Why the fuck? How? Yeah, but it's like, yeah, this is right wing, fucking. Oh God, I fucking hate it. Why can't he be the friend I've met so many years ago? So like a year ago or something, I aborted all contact. I never contacted him again because I couldn't fucking take it anymore. The only thing he was talking about is how the Holocaust never happened and shit like that. And like, you see, if he's right wing, maybe even if he's Nazi, he's okay. I'm left wing, maybe too much left wing, but we I mean, you know, you can be friends with someone who has another.
Right, that was never a problem until he made it a problem.
Yeah, he just wouldn't fucking shut up about it for years.
As far as my experience goes, I've seen members of the Ku Klux Klan. I have met people and was friends with people, and then something would happen and they would to slur and be serious about it. They weren't joking. And I'd be like, whoa. There was this one time in class, Quentin was just being silly. And it's not like we had anything to do. He was just being silly.
Yeah.
And he just did something. And then Ashley, who was this girl I was kind of becoming friends with because she was the girlfriend of one of my friends. So, you know, we all got to know each other, whatever.
Yeah.
She was just like, and it's people like that is the reason why I think N-words should be hung. And it's like, whoa!
Jesus fucking Christ.
Wait, sorry, what happened?
Okay.
N-word should be hung, he just said.
Yeah, it's what she said. And she's Hispanic!
Oh no,
so this girl said, I believe the black should be hanged. Should be hung.
Yeah, she...
You know, that's what we are saying.
She went a step forward than that. She was
obviously,
like that, why I think blank should be hung.
Jesus Christ.
Obviously, I'm substituting that with another word.
She legit said that.
Jesus Christ.
And everyone was. And I looked at like I had made those kinds of jokes with my friends.
Yeah, but not in the middle of class.
Serious? Yeah.
And not that serious. Jesus.
What?
Yeah.
And we were talking. People are fine. It's just that there's a difference between black people and N-words. And I was like, I kind of get what you mean, but you still can't do that.
Yeah. It's a very serious case of know your you know.
Oh,
So
Like that, like you see, as I said, as I
what's
said
Tommy's
before, a Turk friend of mine, is a very good friend of mine. He's Kurd, actually not Turk, but I always call him Turk, which is offensive in its own right. But never mind. And I just thought, like I told him, foreign people should just be executed when he like shot a goal, when he shot a goal in FIFA against me. I was like, dude, every foreign person should be executed right in front of me, and like no one was batting an eye. It was funny. It was just a quick shot. No one was fucking doing anything. But if I go to a public place where like more people than only my friends or him are there and just say, oh, every foreign person should be executed, you know, I'm gonna get my fucking face kicked in. Yeah, you can't just say shit like that. And you,
Tommy, what were you gonna say?
you shouldn't say shit like that in front of class. It's bullshit and just
So I have a
really
question.
heinous.
Yeah. What's your question?
How did we end up here exactly? I'm
Oh,
gonna just join that call 5 minutes ago.
we've just been talking.
Wait, I've
were
been
talking-
recording this the entire time. Like, it's still
Yeah,
recording.
But what for?
I don't
like-
know.
It's just interesting
Because I just
conversation.
joined like maybe like 2 minutes ago, and I don't know what the hell's happened.
Well,
I mean, you can check
No point in explaining.
on where I'm recording it, and then it's like been an
Uh-huh.
hour and 15 minutes of
Like,
the
Are you
surprise.
seriously going to
conversation.
listen to that again? Because isn't it
Well, the
kind of-
beginning of it was.
I could
But
fall
yeah,
asleep
I've
to
met-
this.
I've met several people of like through all backgrounds that have like
Yeah.
done like or said similar stuff, and it's like, what the fuck? Now I got
All
the
I can
college.
do is for you.
I got the college, right? And I met my roommate back in orientation, and his name's Don Trez, but we call him Donnie. And
Yeah.
he's a country black guy. That by the way very much exists. And
Oh no.
and
Yeah.
and so him and I were talking, and you know we were getting along, and you
Yeah.
know he knows I joke around,
Yeah.
and we're just sitting with another buddy of ours, just out in the front of the dining hall, and there's
Yeah.
these kids, and they're being loud and whatnot, blah blah blah. And Donnie
Yeah.
just looks over, and he's like, "And this is why I fucking hate black people." And we were like, "What?"
Yeah, it's fucking funny, dude. It's
Oh, I have stories for you if you really want to hear them. Because
no.
I
Like
have.
I love to hear stories, dude. But
Go ahead, Tommy.
So,
Yeah.
let's
Tell
just
us.
say, half my family's from down south, right?
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
grown up in Jersey all my life, so we're
Yeah.
pretty diverse here. Down there in North Carolina, not